Welcome. Today our guest is Farah Hawa. We're talking about hacking OAuth 2.0. Stay with us till the end because we have a giveaway of a license, 1-year license to Burp Suite Pro. But first, a message from our brand new sponsor, AppSec Engineer.
Application security is in more demand than ever, but companies still can't find enough talent. You could be filling those vacancies right now. There's just one problem. A career in AppSec means learning new skills in both offensive and defensive security across disciplines like DevSecOps, cloud security, threat modeling, and more. Whoa, that sounds like a lot. But don't worry, we got you covered. AppSec Engineer is an all-in-one training platform with over 30 courses in 8 fields of AppSec. Every lesson comes with hands-on labs so you can practice all your skills to perfection. All that for just one subscription, like Netflix, but good for your career. If you want to learn AppSec, you gotta do it right. You gotta choose AppSec Engineer. Get started for free today.
Hey everyone, just a quick note before we get started with the show. Today we'll be using Slido for questions, so please post your questions there and we'll get to them as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the OAuth DevSecOps show. Today's guest is Farah Hawa, who will be teaching us OAuth 2 hacking for beginners. Farah has been on this show before, where she taught us how to hack JWT tokens. So we're really excited to learn more about hacking OAuth 2 flows. Before we bring Farah in, quickly about Farah, she is a security operations team lead at Bugcrowd. She's a part-time bug bounty hunter and creates technical content for both bug bounty hunters and pen testers for her YouTube channel. Welcome to the show, Farah. Welcome back to the show, Farah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the stream. And I'm so excited to be here. I remember having so much fun last time, and I'm excited to be here again. So Today, we're going to talk about hacking OAuth 2.0 for beginners. So since this is going to be beginner friendly, we'll first begin with an introduction to OAuth 2.0. Then we're going to talk about the two most common OAuth flows, which is authorization code grant flow and implicit grant flow. And then I'll go ahead and show you some bugs that can be found in these flows, like reusing access tokens, the redirect URI not being validated, CSRF, and account squatting. So let's just dive right in. So what is OAuth 2.0? So OAuth stands for Open Authorization, and it's a framework that you might have seen being used by applications to allow their users to log in with Facebook, log in with Google, so that users don't need any username or password for that app specifically. So as I said before, OAuth allows users to firstly seamlessly log in into an app without having to create a separate account for that application. But it's also used by enterprises for SSOs, and it's also sometimes used for resource sharing, like importing contacts or images from one application to another. So before we go into the flows, first I'm going to talk about 4 entities that are found in OAuth 2.0. So the first one is the user who is also the resource owner. The resource in this case refers to the data of the user, and the user is obviously the owner of their own data. Then we have the application or the client, which requires the user to log in. So here we're going to take the example of Codecademy, and we'll use it as an example. So as you can see on their login page, you have an option to log in with LinkedIn, Google, Facebook. And assuming that we use Facebook to log in, the next entity will be the authorization server of Facebook, which is responsible for verifying the identity of the user. And then we have the resource server, which is also by Facebook, which hosts and protects the user's data. So now we'll get into the flows and how OAuth 2.0 actually works. So as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 common OAuth flows, and we're going to look at only those in this video. So the first one is authorization code grant flow. So as I said before, as an example, we'll use Codecademy as the client, and we'll assume that the user is logging in through Facebook. So let's understand how this flow actually works. So first, when the user clicks on the login with Facebook button, they will be redirected to Facebook's authorization server, with the following link. So you can see that this URL has a bunch of parameters, and let's talk about what they mean. these parameters will actually be validated by Facebook's authorization server. So first we have the client ID, which is a public identifier given to Codecademy. Then we have the redirect URI, which contains Codecademy's URL, where the user will be taken after they log in. The response type is code, which means that Codecademy needs an authorization code from Facebook. And scope defines the resources that Codecademy needs permission for. So here it needs the name, profile picture, and email address from Facebook. And lastly, we have the state parameter, which is actually optional. It contains a CSRF token. So it's actually a protection against CSRF. So once the user approves Codecademy, and when they approve it, you'll see a screen like this, which is actually called the consent screen. So you can see that Codecademy here needs access to your name, profile picture, and email address, which matches with the scope parameter that we saw earlier. So once Facebook has the user's approval, it will send an authorization code to Codecademy. Now, once the code is sent, Codecademy will exchange this code for an access token from Facebook's authorization server. Then Facebook verifies the code and sends an access token back to Codecademy, and then that is used to exchange for the user's information from the resource server of Facebook. So this is how the authorization code grant flow works. The next flow that we're going to talk about is implicit grant flow. But before we talk about that, let's understand the main difference between these two flows. So as we saw earlier, the authorization code grant flow, here the app exchanges an authorization code for an access token. But in implicit grant flow, there is no authorization code, and the app directly receives an access token, which is then exchanged for the user's details on Facebook. So for this example, for this flow, we will be using Quora as an example. So when the user clicks on the login with Facebook button, a request for authorization is sent to Facebook's authorization server, and this is what the link looks like. I know this has a lot more parameters, and this is because Quora is using like Facebook's SDK, but we don't need to look at that right now. And the rest of the parameters are pretty much the same. There's actually only one difference, that the response type is token instead of code. And once the user approves once the user approves Quora on Facebook and gives access, then an access token is sent to Quora from Facebook, which can be directly exchanged for the user's information. So now that we're done with how this flow works, we're going to talk about some bugs. So the first bug that we have is reusing access tokens. Now, the application, sometimes the client might not expire used codes and tokens. And in that case, if the URL with the code is leaked anywhere, then the attacker can get a full account takeover, or they can, at the minimum, leak some kind of data from the user's account. So I'm going to go to the demo page now. So this is the application that we have for our demo. This is a photo print application, and this will be the client entity. And here the application is a printing service, and it lets users print pictures which are hosted on a gallery application. And to print photos, we need to click this button, and then we can see that we're redirected to a gallery. This is going to be our authorization server and resource server. So when we log in over here, and I'm just going to start intercepting now.
And just while you're building this flow, the attack that you're demonstrating works on both flows. Is this relevant for both flows, implicit and authorization code?
Yeah, so this depends on which flow it is. The access token might not be expired, so it doesn't matter which flow it is, but you can try it and just reuse that token to get access to the information. So we actually have that URL over here for OAuth, and here you can see we have the response type, which is code. We have a client ID and redirect URI over here. So I'm just going to forward this. And once I allow it, you'll see that a code is being sent back to the photo print application. So I'm going to send this request to repeater, and I'm just going to forward this. And you can see that the photos from the gallery are now imported over here since we allowed access. And now we'll try to reuse the code that we sent to repeater. So we're being redirected. And when we follow the redirection, and if we scroll down a little, we'll see that here the photos are found as well. So this allowed the user to reuse this code multiple times. Now, this could be chained with another bug and then kind of give an attacker unlimited access to the victim's account. So it's even if the code doesn't expire after a few minutes, that can be a bug.
So, yep. Sorry, Shanisa, you were gonna.
I was going to ask. So for the token replay attacks, do you need to have access to the device that the token was originally played on?
That could be one attack scenario, but it can also be chained with other bug types, like any bug that allows you to capture a URL or capture any part of the URL can anyway you can leak this code. If the application at that point, for example, let's assume the application has a protection against this. So even if the code is leaked, an attacker might not be able to do much with it. So by itself, it might be like a small or if you report it on a bug bounty program, it might be a low priority bug, but if it's found in a chain, it can be much more impactful.
And does the cookie play a role in this attack flow?
Not really. If you
I just
copy
see it
the
being
URL,
captured. Yeah. So if you just copied that URL and just pasted it in, you'd get the same behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Because this is a code. I mean, right now it's just like a small code because this is a demo application. But the code is actually going to be it's actually a proper token, so it doesn't matter if the cookie is there or not.
Right. And there's a question in our Slido. I feel like we should just get out of the way. Why would you use implicit versus authorization code? Like, what are the trade-offs? Why would you use one flow over the other?
I'm actually not too sure about this answer. I think someone from the defensive side might be able to answer it a little bit better than me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, there's a lot of different OAuth flows that you can use. A lot of it has to do with the architecture of the app. Like if it's a single page web app versus, a thinner client, right? You might want to not store sensitive data on the SPA side than you would if it was a typical kind of web server or a web app talking to a web server. So I think there's a lot of considerations to make when you choose OAuth flows. And I think there's at least, I don't know, like at least 4 of them.
Yeah, there's one more called client credentials grant and there's another one, I can't remember the name, but I think there's some resource
which tries to avoid the client secret having to transfer over the internet. You don't have to transfer it. You kind of both have a way of generating it on either side. So yeah, OAuth 2 and choosing which OAuth 2 flow is probably a very deeper topic here. I think we're just looking at how we could break it, but
and if you've seen you haven't been with us earlier, I think back in November we had a show with Nate showing us the basic of OAuth 2.0, the different flows. So you can go back on our channel and I'll drop also the link in the chat.
Cool.
All right. So yeah, this was the bug, and the next bug that we're going to talk about is the redirect URI not being validated. So here, if the authorization server does not validate that the redirect URI belongs to the client application, then it might be possible for an attacker to trick a victim to click on an OAuth login link, where the value of the redirect URI will be an attacker controlled domain. And then once the user logs in with that link, then the authorization code or the token can be captured by the attacker. So let's look at how this works. So I think I might have to kill this app and start it again just because we want a fresh session.
And Farah,
Okay.
is this code on GitHub for your photo print app?
Yeah, this is actually not my app, but it's a publicly available lab on GitHub.
Cool.
I'm gonna give links at the end so you can see
Cool.
that.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna do the whole thing again. Now here, we are gonna be editing the redirect URI value. So I actually, so this lab also comes with an attacker domain. So this will be the website that we're gonna use to capture the tokens. This will act like an attacker server. So over here, as you can see, the redirect URI is photo print. So I'm gonna just change that and make it and add the attacker's website here. So and I think it looks good. So I'm gonna forward this. So because the redirect URI was edited in that URL, the the victim was redirected to the attacker's domain, and the attacker could then capture the code from the URL. So we're gonna try to use this code to log into the photo print app and get the gallery. So we'll just go to this URL. So when we do this, we get access once again because of the code that was leaked because of the insecure redirect URI. So in real life, sometimes the apps may disallow external domains in the redirect URI parameter. So in that case, you might be able to try some bypasses, like you might be able to try a subdomain of the application and or any page with an XSS vulnerability or an open redirect vulnerability, because this will also allow you to capture the token if you can't just put an attacker's domain directly. So those are the demos that we had. Now I still have two more bugs to talk about. So the next,
Before we hop into the next bug, there's another question in the Slido on redirect URIs, and it is, isn't the redirect URI registered with the auth server, maybe Facebook? Question mark. Could you explain how that could be overwritten at the authorization server's end?
so it's actually not Facebook that's validating the value of the redirect URI. It's the application that verifies. It has to be the app. Whatever the application is going to give, that's where the user will be redirected. So the application needs to allow or disallow certain pages or certain domains from the value for that parameter.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
That's all the
So
questions.
the next bug that we're going to talk about is CSRF. So like I mentioned earlier, we have a state parameter, and if that state parameter is either not present or if it's not validated, then the flow might be open to CSRF attacks. I've also seen at times that the state parameter is a static value, which means that it's not checked by the client at all. And you can also use some normal CSRF bypasses, like removing the state parameter completely, or maybe using another user state parameter. And because the application doesn't validate if it belongs to another user, it might still accept it.
How long would a token be valid for replay?
Typically, it's a few minutes, but that would be actually a more secure setting, but it might also be valid for much longer than that. So lastly, we have account squatting. Now, this is, I think, as being a triager, this is one of the most common bugs that I've seen found in OAuth. So when applications give users an option to create accounts through an email as well as log in using social media, they might miss checking if a previous account was created with the same email. And this kind of allows an attacker to create a backdoor account to access the victim's details. And this is how it would work. So an attacker would first register with the email address of the victim. This attack does require email verification to not be present on the app, but I think email verification is a bug which can either easily be bypassed, or a lot of applications simply don't have it. So I don't think it's a very big kind of prerequisite. So the attacker first goes ahead and registers with the email address of the victim. Next, the victim logs in using Google or Facebook with the same email address, and both those accounts actually get tied to the same one. And then the attacker can log in through their email password and access the victim's details. So this is called account squatting, because the attacker kind of squats and waits for the victim to sign up with Google or Facebook, and then get their details. And this, I think, would be an attack that would be they can also work a little for targeted attacks, because you might be able to pull email IDs from some enterprise and then kind of just do an account squatting attack on all of them. Um, so yeah, those are all the bugs that I had to talk about for today, and these are the resources that were used. So we have Portugal's OAuth exercises. They actually have the CSRF lab, so you can practice it. The lab that I got from GitHub is here. It's just called Vulnerable OAuth 2.0 Applications. And these are some other blogs and videos that I used. And I've also included my own video as a little self promo.
Oh, another question around OAuth. Are there bugs that you've just described? And it's a question from the audience. Are they in the protocol itself, or is it mostly implementation problems? Like the way people configure either their choice of which flow to use, or how they configure specific parameters, or I guess, configs of those flows. Like, is that where most of the problems are that you've triaged?
Yeah, I think it's mostly in the implementation. But I mean, of course, it arises from the flow having some flaws. But ultimately, it can all be secured, and it's the implementation that ultimately needs to be fixed.
Yeah. Let's see, more questions. Are some flows considered more vulnerable than others? I guess implicit flow is probably considered the weakest relative to the rest.
Implicit would probably be the easiest to exploit because of there's just maybe one step, right? So it kind of makes it easier for an attacker.
Right. You just need to access the access token, right? And then that's it.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, and I get before we move on with more Q&A, I want to drop the keyword that we actually dropped it already in the chat. We're using DevSecOps Live with a bang. That you have to drop in the chat to be eligible for our giveaway. We're giving away a 1-year membership or subscription to Burp Suite Pro. So while we're doing the Q&A, send your question to Slido, and before the end of the show, we'll announce the winner. And once the winner will be announced, please email us within the 2 hours to claim your prize. So good luck, everyone. Keep going.
I see
your question.
I see the chat.
Yes, flooded.
Awesome. Okay. We did this one. We did which flows
so there was one question about encrypted traffic and how the redirect URI bug, and comparing encrypted traffic. Is there actually a bug there?
I didn't understand the question. Encrypted traffic.
So with the redirect URI bug, one of our participants was saying that should be a rare bug, just because there's policies that should be in place around that. And then also the fact that using that type of bug may be more related to using a vulnerable device versus, HTTPS.
I don't think redirect URI is related to, I don't think it has anything to do with the device, because there's no interception involved, and there's no capturing involved from the client side. It's just the redirect URI that's vulnerable. So when any domain you provide, or if you give like a subdomain or something, then the code is getting leaked on that domain. It has nothing to do with encryption or traffic interception.
Okay. How to protect OAuth client secrets for SPA type applications. So SPA is single page app, big JavaScript client apps. How do you protect, or I guess you have three places to store, right? You have session store, local store, and application memory, I guess, right? So I guess it's a little bit different than a typical web browser or client app where you have other places to store, like cookies. So I guess, have you done any, or I guess, can you comment on the best OAuth flow to use for SPA apps, or what your experience is with SPA apps and OAuth 2?
I think authorization code grant flow would be something that's pretty standard for a SPA app. I think it could work. Like you said, there's not a lot to work with there.
Yeah, and I think PKCE, which is Proof Key Code Exchange, if I have that right, is like a layer on top of that where you can manage the way, I think you hash the secret and then you send over that hash or something. I'm not exactly 100% sure on the implementation, but it does solve some of the problems of transmitting sensitive data. Cool. All right, what else we got here?
Yeah, so Farah, can you talk about how you've seen these change with other vulnerabilities in the past?
I'm sorry?
Can you talk about how you've seen these bugs be chained together?
Right. So, for example, we have the token reuse attack. If you just find a simple XSS, or even that can also be chained with the redirect URI. If you manage to leak the code, if it's already used and if you can reuse it, I think that's a good chain. CSRF also can be chained with XSS for additional impact. Yeah, and like I said, whenever you can also, like, these are bugs that you generally find in web applications as well, like insecure redirect URI can be chained with a subdomain takeover, or it can be chained with an open redirect or an XSS. So CSRF, you can use certain other bypasses, like it might not always just be a regular CSRF, a simple CSRF. You might have to chain it with something and bypass it. So I think when you're hacking on a real life application, you kind of have to keep the chains in mind. It's never going to be just like that one bug and the same scenario everywhere.
Two more questions that I see. Is the access token, all right, here it is. Access token is just a key, or does it have a type? I don't know if that makes sense.
But what do you mean by key?
Yeah, I don't know if the question is that clear. So let's okay, how about this one? What is the meaning of code or token in the response type parameter?
So code is the authorization code, which is found in the first flow, the authorization code grant flow. The code is then exchanged for a token. But when the response type is token, in the implicit grant flow, it means that it's just receiving an access token. It does not need to exchange it then for anything else. The access token will directly give access to the user's data.
Cool. Any other questions here? I guess there are some questions in the YouTube channel here that I could probably scroll up and
While you go through that, Farah, it's been about a year and a few months that you've been on the show last time. I remember that back then it was your first month at Bugcrowd. You had just started your new job. So how has it been, and what is your job there? What's your role at Bugcrowd?
So I am actually in the triage team. So we triage a lot of submissions. It's actually been really great. I think on the triage side, you get to learn a lot and how to actually write good reports, create better POCs. I think I've learned so much. So I think, yeah, it's been pretty great.
Yeah. And would you say, has that affected you as a bug bounty hunter? Like, are you reporting bugs differently since you've been in triage? Like, what kind of advice do you have for beginners, I guess, reporting their first bugs?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's helped me so much, and to write better reports and create just like when you create a report, I think the first thing that I want to make sure now is I try to make it as simple and easy for the triager to reproduce and validate. I think one thing I've understood is that triagers have to constantly switch contexts. So they may not know the application as well as you do as a hunter. So it's really important to kind of break everything down, explain it to them, because everyone wants to get their report triaged faster. So you might as well reduce the kind of back and forth that happens and give as much detail as possible. Uh, but also, giving detail doesn't mean you copy and just put in random descriptions. Like, we also really appreciate shorter reports. I think that's something that I've learned. Like for an open redirect or an XSS vulnerability, uh, sometimes I just like go to this link, and that's great. That's enough. We don't need to know the remediation advice. I mean, it's always good for remediation because that's good for the customer. But like, I think I've kind of learned to avoid the generic descriptions while writing reports.
Yeah. So having a very clear report, being able to reproduce the bug easily, because like you said, a triager is maybe not in the context or know the application as well as you do. Anything that like you see all the time that people shouldn't do, like don't do that. We hate seeing this at the triage.
I think one thing we hate when happens, they kind of write in the report, oh, please check this video, and they've just attached one video, and then we have to go through like a 15-minute video where they're switching between the notes app and showing us what's happening. I think it's better for triagers if there's always a written report, and a video helps, but please don't just submit videos.
Yes, that makes sense. That makes sense. Shaniza, Nikki, anything else
Yeah.
in the chat?
There is a good question that I feel like you might want to answer. People are asking, how do you learn all this stuff?
I think I learned most of it from Twitter, and I think if you're struggling to find a place to learn these things, I would suggest you subscribe to newsletters. I think Integrity has a really great newsletter called Bug Bites. They have I read it every week without fail. They have the top write up of the week, top tools, videos, podcasts. Like, it's a curation of some of the really good resources, and it's also kind of vetted. So I think it's a really good place to learn from.
Cool.
So I'm curious what you've seen in the past when it comes to authentication versus authorization. What gaps in authentication allow us to get to this point of even having a vulnerable authorization?
I didn't quite understand that question. If you could just be more, like, a little more specific.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about things like, we always encourage users to use MFA, for example. And are there gaps in that process that allow us to even get to a token replay?
Yeah. I think, so you mean there are like barriers to come to like that attack?
Correct.
Yeah.
Like, what have you seen?
Yeah, so for authorization code attack, I would say that there can be an MFA, but I think with OAuth, there usually isn't an MFA involved. Like, if you notice, sometimes when you log in with Facebook, Google, there isn't an additional MFA, and I mean, having an MFA would be more of a best practice. It's also not something, because I feel like there has to be a fine line between how secure you want to be and how easy you want to make your app to use. So when you log in with Google, the app kind of trusts you that you have access to the Google account, so you are the owner. So I do feel like there could be gaps, but those are more best practices, and I personally haven't seen them being adopted as much. MFA not being there on an OAuth is more normal.
But Google or Facebook would then prompt you to MFA your own account. If you were in a brand new browser and you tried to OAuth log in with Facebook or Google, and you were not logged in with Facebook or Google on the other side, you would presumably get thrown into that authentication flow, which would hopefully, you're on a brand new browser, maybe brand new machine, would hopefully start that whole re-authentication process, including MFA or whatever adaptive mechanisms exist. Right.
So that would happen when you log in, but when you already have an access token, then Google assumes that that process is already done.
Right. And that and I guess that's why Google will remind you to check all the apps that you have allowed OAuth, tokens to, because of that risk, right? So it only happens on that first time, and then every other time after that, it's just implicit trust. Well, yeah.
So you only have to allow it once, and then so actually for the CSRF attack, when you link your own social account to the victim's account, you have to make sure that it's allowed for your Facebook account first before you go ahead and CSRF them, because then they will get a prompt, and then when they get a prompt, it's kind of again like a barrier.
Right. Yeah, so I guess it's always a good idea to check how many apps you've allowed access tokens to in, GitHub, Google, Facebook, Microsoft. Who else is a big OAuth 2 provider? I guess those
I think that's some good security hygiene that you can do.
Yeah. And there have been malicious apps that were just like created just for this purpose, to backdoor somebody's account.
Right. It'll be just be like maybe like a fake account or something created. You're not actually going to use your own social account.
Yeah. So here's a good question. What's next for Farah? What, last time you were here, we talked about JWT. This time we're talking about OAuth. What's next? What are we talking about next time?
I don't know. You guys tell me.
No, but I've noticed that you've been very active on Instagram, and that your content is a bit different than what you've been doing on your YouTube channel. So can you tell us a bit about that and what you're doing differently on Instagram?
Yeah, I think on Instagram, I don't think a lot of security and a lot of tech folks are on Instagram. It's more so so the content is more for like the general audience. It's a lot of like security hygiene tips, telling people to enable MFA, telling people about data leaks, because I have friends that are not from tech or from infosec, and when we talk about data leaks, and I'm like, oh, have you heard about this data leak? And they're like, they have no idea what's going on. And I just feel like these things, I feel like people should be aware of this, and people should switch their 2FA on. And like you said, so on Instagram, a couple of people have reached out and be like, my account was hacked, can you help me recover it? And I'm like, did you have 2FA enabled? And they're like, no. So I think that's where my inspiration comes from my Instagram content, and also like a little bit of sharing resources and how you can get into cybersecurity. So that's what my content is about on Instagram.
So it looks like there's a request for you to do SAML next.
All right. I think, I think we're going after all the authentication and authorization stuff. So it fits.
Okay, so we have a winner for a giveaway. Gabrielle Montenegro, you won the 1-year subscription to Burp Suite. Burp Suite Pro.
Burp Suite.
I can't find the word. Burp Suite, that thing.
Burp Suite Pro.
Burp Suite Pro. Please email us with the same email that you use for YouTube, please, at oasp.devslop@gmail.com to claim your prize in the next 2 hours, and we'll get you set up. So thank you, everyone, for participating and for all your questions. Thank you, Farah, for always providing great information and for all the work you do in the community, your YouTube channel. I know it takes a lot of time. How do you find the time, actually? How do you manage your time to create so much content and still have, a full-time job?
I think I kind of divide my day into like 2 parts, where one is focusing more on my triage stuff. And the next part, I try to either do content or I try to do bug bounty. So some weeks there'll be a lot of content, but other weeks there might be less content and more kind of bug bounty hunting or learning skills. So I feel like I'm not trying to do too much at once, but it kind of just manages itself.
Cool. There is one or two more questions that just popped up, and I guess if we still have time, we might as well kind of go through these.
Let's go.
Yeah. So what is the most common OAuth 2 mess up that you see in your day-to-day? What is the most common incorrect implementation?
So I think it would be CSRF and OAuth squatting. These two, I feel like I see them a lot come up on triage as well.
Okay. There is another question. If you could briefly explain the purpose of the state parameter.
So the state parameter is actually like a CSRF token. It just protects against CSRF. So it's an additional way for the app to make sure that the user that's requesting the link is actually also the owner or the initiator of the OAuth process. That's the main function of the state parameter.
Cool. A request to repeat the website that you mentioned that has the information on the bug of the week.
Oh, it's Integrity, and their newsletter is called Bug Bites. I think if you just Google Bug Bites,
I got
Integrity,
it. I'll throw it in the chat. Yep.
Yeah, and we've had many people asking for your slides or resources. I'm not sure we'll share your slides, but at least the resources, we'll add them to the show notes as soon as the stream ends. I'll get them from you before you go, Farah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I think, let me just go to the other YouTube chat. It's kind of hard to figure out this one, but I guess one last question here. Somebody's asking, how did you first get into bug bounties, and what was your first paid bug that you found?
I got into bug bounties in 2020, so I think around March 2020. And my first paid bug, I think it was an HTML injection that triggered on emails. It's kind of like a very noobish bug, but I guess that's where everyone starts from.
Cool. That's a great story. Yeah, I think there's a lot of, you inspire a lot of people, at least according to this chat. People are big fans of you, Farah. So it's great to see.
Thank you.
Cool.
So before we wrap up, maybe we can talk about what's coming up next week.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing Secure Your Code with GitHub code scanning with David Benbegnu on February the 13th.
Yeah, so that's next week. So yeah, go ahead and follow us on any social media platform. We announce our shows and we go live at least twice a month, at least. And so you'll know what's coming up next. I just want to, take the opportunity to remind everyone that we are an OAuth project. So if you want to encourage the foundation, become a member, and look on the website, look up the different benefit. And I guess OAuth's been working with a lot of new partners to give you different benefits when you become a member. So check it out at OAuth.org and look for membership benefits. And there are also student membership that are available. So that's what I have to say about that. Any last word from you, Nikki, Shnisa?
No, it's always great to have you, Farah. Thank you so much. And you're welcome back anytime. We would love to dig into more authentication and authorization problems with you, or other things too. So yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me. It's always so much fun being here, and the audience is always amazing. So thank you for that.
Looking forward to the Samuel show.
Yes, we'll have to keep in touch. Thank you, everyone, and see you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.